Welcome tonight to our author talk with Edward G. Rogoff. We're very happy to have Dr. Rogoff here to talk to us for this program. I'm Phil Pajali from the Yonkers Public Library, and I'll be doing a Q&A with Dr. Rogoff. And I would like to thank the Yonkers NORC, the Neighborhood Naturally Occurring Retirement Community, and also the Friends of Crestwood Library for giving their support to make this program possible tonight. Before we begin our interview with Dr. Rogoff, I'm going to just read a bio to give you an idea of what he has accomplished. So, Edward G. Rogoff is a professor of entrepreneurship and former dean of the LIU Brooklyn School of Business, Public Administration, and Information Sciences. Prior to that, he was the Lawrence N. Field Professor of Entrepreneurship in the Department of Management of the Zicklin School of Business at Baruch College, the City University of New York. He was also chair of the Department of Management. He received a BA, MBA, MA, and PhD from Columbia University, where he wrote his thesis under the supervision of Nobel laureate William Vickery. Dr. Rogoff has served as the academic director of the Lawrence N. Field Center for Entrepreneurship at Baruch College, teaches and conducts research in entrepreneurship, particularly relative to minority and later life issues. Dr. Rogoff was named the 2010 Outstanding Entrepreneurship Educator of the Year by the United States Association of Small Business and Entrepreneurship. He is the author of Bankable Business Plans and co-author of The Entrepreneurial Conversation. His newest book, Bankable Business Plans for Nonprofits, which we're going to be talking about tonight, is co-authored with Perry Lynn Moffitt and was published in 2021. He is published in such journals as the Journal of Business and Entrepreneurship, the Journal of Developmental Entrepreneurship, and Family Business Review. He initiated and supervised the largest study of minority entrepreneurs in the United States, the National Minority Business Owners Survey. Since 2007, he has led a research partnership with Babson College, under which Baruch and Babson constitute the U.S. team of the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, the largest, longest continuing, and most respected international study of entrepreneurship in the world. Professor Rogoff has written articles for the New York Times, Forbes, and Newsday, as well as having been a guest on CNN. Prior to joining the faculty at Baruch College, he was an entrepreneur in the radio broadcasting industry, where he headed 2 companies that operated 23 radio stations throughout the United States. He was the president of the Hemophilia Association of New York for more than 20 years, continues to serve on its board and the boards of the Hemophilia Services Consortium and Live On New York, the New York Organ Donor Network. In addition, he serves on the boards of the Global Center for Social Entrepreneurship and the New York Family Enterprise Center. His hobbies include cooking and boxing. Welcome, Dr. Rogoff.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
So, as I mentioned earlier, the newest book by Dr. Rogoff is Bankable Business Plans for Nonprofits, and that's what we're going to be focusing on tonight. So my first question to you, Dr. Rogoff, what prompted you and Perry Lynn Moffitt to write a book about developing business plans for nonprofits?
Yeah, so, I taught courses at Baruch on doing business plans. And in the process of doing that, I used every available book that was out there that offered guidance on how to write a business plan. And I hated them all. And so then I decided I should write my own, and I did, and that was Bankable Business Plans, and then a textbook version of it that came off of that. And that, that was a great experience, and the book is still used. I've just actually finished an updated edition of it. And the one thing that happened all the time is that I would get asked by people, is there anything like this for nonprofits? And I would always say, no, there isn't. And I'm very interested in nonprofits. I'm active in nonprofits, and there's nothing like this book. And I always had, I got to write this book. I'm going to write this book. And, so I worked on it from time to time, but I never finished it. And then with the help of COVID, it really was like, let me sit here and finish it. I'm not going out anyway. So let me sit here and work on this book. I should just say, like in New York, 1 in 8 organizations is a nonprofit. A huge percentage of employment is at nonprofit organizations. You have so many people who are socially minded, who see nonprofits as a way to achieve what they're interested in, to help somebody to achieve a social good. And so it's just an important topic. And so that's what motivated me. I believe that running a nonprofit is a more complex, tougher, and more important job than running a business. You got more variables to manage, you got more issues, you have more regulation, you have more restrictions. You have a lot of things that make it complex. And that's an attraction. To me, it's in a way, it's an attraction. It's like an intellectual challenge to build and run a nonprofit. And those people need to be supported. And I look at this book as a way to support them in doing that.
What was the process of working with a co-author, and how long did it take to complete the manuscript?
Yeah, so I was recently, you may have seen that Jimmy Carter, former President Jimmy Carter, and his wife Rosalind celebrated their 75th anniversary, and which is like incredible, amazing. And I saw an interview with them, and the interviewer asked them, what was the most difficult thing you ever did together? And without a hesitation, Jimmy Carter answered, "We wrote a book together last year." And I thought that's, and I laughed. This is like absolutely true. So Perry Lynn is my wife. She's an author in her own right. She's an excellent editor. And it's very difficult to do a book, with someone you're married to, someone you love, someone who you understand, and they understand you. You can't hide anything from them, and have very, very different work styles. So yeah, so it's anyway, she's an excellent editor and a brutal editor, and so yeah, so I can't say I was happy every minute of every day working on this with her, but I was very happy with the outcome.
I have to ask, how do your work styles differ?
I'm compulsive. So, once it's on my agenda to do, I sit down and I do it. And she's not. And so I'm like, okay, let's do the next chapter. Well, I'm not ready to do the next chapter. Let's do the next chapter. No, maybe next week, or, we have company this week or something else. That's really, I'd say, the fundamental, divide.
Yeah. Okay. In the introduction, you highlight the differences between a business plan and a strategic plan. How should we distinguish the two?
Yeah, so I think a strategic plan exists to solve a problem with an organization, to pick a specific path to meet certain goals. But a business plan is really more universal. So should I start, what should I start? Who's my market? Where's my funding gonna come from? Really, the big fundamental questions all have to be taken into account in a business plan. And when it's finished, you end up, if it's done right, you end up with a roadmap that is really telling you where you go from here. And so a strategic plan, more applicable to an existing organization that's sort of answering the question of, look, we've done so much up to this point. Now, what are we going to do? Or we're running short on capital. Now what do we do? Or we have new competition in the markets that we work. Now what do we do? A business plan is, let's take a fresh look. Let's take a blank sheet of paper and start from scratch.
Would you say that some of the problems come in when people are unable to tell them apart, or they get them confused, or they don't understand how they work?
You know,
Supposed to work?
yeah, I mean, there are so many issues. I think it's particularly with nonprofits, people who are starting them, the founders of them, in my experience, they're so motivated. They have a passion for the mission, and it's important to them, and it's something they've thought of for a long time, and they, just believe that everybody's going to want to support the cause that they think is so important. And it's, by and large, it's not that way. It's hard to raise money. It's hard to run programs. It's so hard to make partnerships, and people get discouraged afterwards, and they just need to accept this is part of the process. And every organization hits these bumps, and not everyone's going to feel as passionate about the issue that you think is so important. And boards of nonprofits are typically filled with people who share the same passion for the issue that the nonprofit's addressing.
Could you talk about what you describe in the book as the intertwining of mission and money, and how that can be an obstacle for a nonprofit business plan?
Yeah, so people, let me go back one step a bit. Money, you can't avoid the issue of money, and nonprofit needs to balance its books just like a profit-making business. A nonprofit, let me just say something. Yeah, you're right. So Steve making, some really good points. Nonprofits need to think about where their money's going to come from, how many t-shirts they're going to sell, who's going to contribute, who's going to give them major contributions, whether they can get government contracts. They need to think about all these issues relative to money. And the mission has to be served in the process of that. It's easy to drift off mission in the service to money, but the money is essential. And so that's complicated. It really gets complicated.
In the book, you describe a venture at Wave Hill in the Bronx that was not successful. What went wrong?
Yeah, so maybe, people who are on the call, maybe you've been to Wave Hill, which is in Riverdale, beautiful, beautiful site on the Hudson River, fantastic gardens and, sitting areas and such. It's like a, park. It is a park. And they've used for many years these Adirondack chairs, these beautiful wooden Adirondack chairs that people would sit in and look at the view or read a book or eat a sandwich. And people would ask the management there, these chairs are so beautiful and they're comfortable, can I buy one? Or do you know where I can buy one? And so the leadership at some point decided, this is a good earned income initiative for us. And I'm a big believer in earned income initiatives for nonprofits. And they thought, well, we could make money selling these chairs. And so they arranged to have them manufactured somewhere. And they thought, okay, well, now we have an answer. We can put a couple chairs in the gift shop. We can start selling chairs. Well, there's a lot more to selling chairs than that. Where are you going to store them? What's the price? How many are you going to order? What's the delivery system? And all of these details mired them in this process, and ultimately it was unsuccessful because all of these things were so complicated. As you can imagine, you're selling furniture, delivering furniture, and people are going to have questions like, can I fix it? Can I buy replacement parts? On and on and on. And it just became so complex that they ended up not making money on it, in fact, losing money, and then eventually decided to stop it. Had they done a real plan for this and really maybe recruited some people who were like in the furniture industry and said, how do you sell furniture? How do you deliver it? How do you store it? How do you design it? Should we have this made outside the United States? Would it save us? Could we do it for half the price? It's just a million questions that people who run a park don't know. And so to really run a complete process of thinking through this, checking with experts, considering various options, doing budgets, doing a supply chain chart. None of these things were done. And had they done that, the chairs are beautiful. Some people would have bought them. They could have been done even at a low volume way to make money. But in the final analysis, it didn't work.
What are some examples of business models?
Oh gosh. So, yeah, so Steve asked, I just go back to this thing. Wouldn't it have made
about
sense?
Wave Hill.
Yeah, about Wave Hill to license the rights. Yeah, I mean, maybe to go to, I'm just making it up, like to go to LL Bean or somebody, or to a furniture company and brand it as the Wave Hill chair and show a picture of the chair sitting overlooking the Hudson River at Wave Hill, talking about its history, blah, 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 and just letting them sell it and manage everything. That would have been a lot, that would have been a lot better, and easier and simpler. And they could have focused on what they do best, which is, run a beautiful park and have fantastic gardens and, a nice place to spend the day. So the question about, business models. So, a business model is the simplest statement of what your organization does and how it does it as a business. So, if you think about it, a business model for an airline is basically, we operate planes, we carry people from point A to point B, we try to develop competitive advantages in certain areas so we can charge higher prices and make a lot of money. And that's their business model. And yeah, do they do a million other things? Yes, but that's their business model. And every organization, nonprofits have business models as well. I mean, if we're talking about the Bronx, the Bronx Zoo has a model that, they exist to support, wildlife and animals, and to expose the public to them, and to support these, now to support these species, and to do science. They get a lot of grants and they do that. That's their model. That's what they do. So if, we went to the Bronx Zoo and we said, gee, you got all this open space and all of this, why don't you sponsor a soccer tournament? You could make a lot of money on some of these open spaces. This doesn't fit. That's a little bit like doing the chair for Wave Hill. It's outside of their business model. So, there are some business models that are focused on, we are the central main organization that does what we do. So from, something like, GMHC, Gay Men's Health Crisis, which got, pulled into the AIDS epidemic. and became a major research and social support for people with AIDS beginning in the 80s and, continuing to today. Their business model was, we want to dominate this space. Are there hundreds of organizations that do things in local areas or in different pieces of this? Yes, but we want to be the main one. We want to be the one that attracts the most money. We want big donors who are interested in this area to think they can't have a giving plan that doesn't include us. And that's their model, is to dominate a space. And that's fine. There are other business models where you pick a niche, a really, really small niche. This is like the restaurant model in New York. There are 10,000 restaurants in New York. I mean, putting COVID aside, these restaurants are generally prosperous. But if you look at them, in a way, they're all unique, right? And you don't see, there are very few of them that are owned, hundreds at a time. A few, fast food or Shake Shack, which is, fast food. But, mostly you have individual things, individual units. Why? Because, this is the Thai restaurant that's in Park Slope. This is the one that's in, the Southern Indian food in, Highland Boulevard on Staten Island. And so they have a niche in terms of their pricing, their products, their location. And if you look, within a 10-block radius, how many other Southern Indian restaurants are there around there? The answer is probably none. And so they've picked a niche, they defend that niche, and they're successful. Well, the same thing for nonprofits. You could have, the West Side Little League is a nonprofit. That's their niche. We just, we do kids ages 8 to 13, and they play Little League on the West Side of Manhattan. Beautiful. They're not going to get competition. They're going to be rewarded based on how well they do their job within that niche. So, that's, a typical business model applied. No one does it explicitly, but that's really what's going on. Those business models are being applied to nonprofits. A very common business model is, we're going to be the lowest cost provider of a service. So that's kind of the Walmart model, right? We're going to be the lowest price that you can buy, laundry detergent at. Beautiful. That's a great model. People always want to, if they can get the same thing for less, they're going to go there and they're going to buy it. Well, people think that doesn't apply to nonprofits. It absolutely does apply to nonprofits. One of the things you said about in my introduction is, for many years I was involved with I still am involved with the Hemophilia Association of New York. And these are patients who use extremely expensive drugs. I mean, not unusual for a patient to use hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of these drugs, or $1 million in a year. And we decided that, we could create an earned income initiative where, because we're a nonprofit and a couple other wrinkles to this story, that we could sell these drugs for less than the profit-making home care companies that typically provided them, or pharmacies that provided these drugs. And we did it, we set it up. It's in partnership with the New York Blood Center. We have about 500 patients a year, and we do $100 million in revenue. And it makes a lot of money. Where does the money go? It goes to support treatment of patients in hospitals. It goes to support the Hemophilia Association itself, that provides services to these people. And what is it? It's like a niche earned income initiative. Once we've done that, no one else is going to do that. And so we've got our niche. We serve it. It's not a huge number of patients, but it's very profitable. And it supports our mission. So there's money and mission together. And, it was that's a story of something that was a great success. Not, and I'm not going to say it was trivially easy to do. It was not, but it was complex. But it was done because there were big incentives for everybody to participate. The hospitals, the New York Blood Center, the Hemophilia Association, and others.
So really a trap that people that could fall into starting something like this is they realize that they can't dominate the market, but yet they don't have any kind of niche. So they're just one of many.
Right. You got to find, I mean, I'm a believer, you got to find a niche.
Yeah.
What is it that you can do better than anybody else? Fundamentally in business, there are two strategies, low cost and differentiation. And so, restaurants follow differentiation strategies, most businesses follow differentiation, what they're selling is different, not necessarily cheaper, but the same rules. So this is one of the things I've done in this book, and part of my thinking is that entrepreneurs have figured out a lot of these successful strategies and tools for starting a business. Let's apply them to nonprofits. And I think the same is true with a nonprofit. I have a former student of mine who started a nonprofit that actually now has a profit-making side, which is has to do with how she could get funding, but that creates interactive toys and other products for kids with disabilities. And there's only one other organization in the United States that's in this niche. And it's a wonderful service. There's a great need for it. Her products are fantastic. It's not easy to do. But so that's this different. She's got a really tight differentiation strategies. She's not so much worried about competition as she is about finding her market and selling to them.
Yeah, I wanted to move on to marketing campaigns. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the 4 P's of marketing.
Yeah, so product, price, promotion. What's the 4th one? You have it there. So this is, marketing 101 for business is that you need to get the product right, you need to set the price right, you need to promote it right, and you need to have the place. So what's your geography, either of where you're physically locating or where you're selling? Every nonprofit has to answer these same questions. What are you selling? So, something like, I have a friend who every year walks in the breast cancer walk in New York, and she raises money from her friends, and there, thousands of people do this, and they all raise money, and the money goes to research. And so, there are a lot of organizations that raise money for breast cancer research and for, supporting patients who are dealing with breast cancer. This organization hit on a unique strategy. It's got New York, it's got, reaching out to people one-to-one. What's its promotional strategy? So you have friends who have had breast cancer, they send you an email that says, I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I'm walking in this walk, would you contribute to it? So that's their promotional strategy, and they have the place. Their price is not really so directly relevant here because, obviously any gift is fine for them. It's a brilliant strategy, but in many ways, it's like a business strategy. I mean, the Girl Scouts and Girl Scout cookies would probably the single most successful of these kind of earned income initiatives, which they sort of stumbled on almost 100 years ago when one Girl Scout troop ran a cookie fair and someone said, my God, this makes so much money. And it gets these girls active in the community, and they're supporting the organization, and it's competition. It's got a lot of pluses to it. It's a beautiful plan. to raise money and do a lot of other things. Keep the organization current, keep it top of mind with all the people whose doors are knocked on or now had emails sent to them. Yeah, yeah. So that's so the person says, yeah, what's the story here? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's a whole other question. But
So
anyway, yeah.
your book uses the 10 action steps. I'm not going to give them away. I would like
Yeah,
you all
yeah,
to
it's
read the
fine.
book. But I was interested in which one you would consider to be the most commonly neglected by developing entrepreneurs.
So I think when budgets, there's no doubt I can answer that in 5 seconds. Budgets. Nobody likes to do budgets, and it's a little bit like being a manager. Once you have to get really specific and figure things out, it's a lot of blocking and tackling. It's tough work. It's research. It's hard to come up with numbers that are absolutely right all the time. So it's really where people fall down is that, they do a lot of the work, they answer these questions. Now you gotta translate it into numbers, and you gotta move from that mission to money. And people say, oh my God, I don't know Excel that well. I'm not an accountant. I can't do this. The answer is anyone can do it. It's really just a matter of deciding I want to do this. And if you really don't want to do it, it's a good opportunity to go out and recruit some people to become part of your team who can help you with this. And there's an accountant in New York who works with nascent nonprofit entrepreneurs for free until they hit a certain size. And I think he's fantastic. William Scotty. I've got a video of him on the website that accompanies the book. And he's a great guy, and he's got a huge list of clients. And the point is, there are accountants that want to provide community service. There are organizations that want to help you. Your high school student who knows Excel well and has taken one business course in high school can probably help you do it. But that's where people fall down. And I understand why, and also it's a little bit, now you're going to challenge your vision, right? So you've worked out this vision. I really want to do this. Yeah, people are going to support me. I've gotten some good feedback, blah, blah, blah. Everything is lining up. But somehow when you have to go down and you got to put the numbers to paper, you think, oh no, this is going to prove it doesn't work. And you know what? It might. And that's so valuable to you because that's your opportunity to change it in a way that does make it work.
Did the pandemic have any effect on the content of the book? Did it cause you to rethink your approach?
Not in that sense of rethinking the approach, but the pandemic has been brutal on a lot of nonprofits. It's distracted people, people who ran events to make money, people who have galas, which I'm not a big fan of, period. But people who do them and they make millions doing them, they couldn't do it. Arts organizations that rely on selling tickets to performances, it was devastating. So I think we tried to deal with some of those issues in the book, but a lot of nonprofits are at this point, clawing their way back in the hope that they'll become what they were prior to the pandemic.
Is there any feedback that you'd like to share about the book? Any success stories you'd like to
I think it's too early to say success stories.
Yeah.
So if not galas, what's a good option to a gala? So I think actually things like the breast cancer walk are a good replacement for a gala. I think asking people to write letters to their friends and asking for money to support their organization. These are events that cost very little, so they have a high margin, right? So I'm taking another business concept here. They have a high margin. You run a gala, so you could say, it'll show up, in the New York Times or something. It says, oh my God, the Cancer Society ran a gala. They raised $10 million. Well, maybe their revenue was $10 million, but the event cost them millions to run. They need a whole staff that's working on it year in, year out. They had to, rent the grand ballroom at the fanciest hotels. They had to hire security. They had to promote it like crazy. So when it's all said and done, maybe they had $10 million in revenue and $2 million that went to the organization. So I'm not a big fan of those kinds of events. Obviously, for some organizations, it's right. The Met Gala with all the fashion people and stuff, I'm sure it's a wildly successful event, but not too many organizations are at that level that they can do that. But I would say I've had students who have started nonprofits, and the example I gave of the woman who makes products for students with disabilities. She was a student of mine. She came up with the idea in class. She has two children who have disabilities. She was so close to the mission. She felt it was so important. And, she's done an amazing job. And the pandemic has been very, very difficult on her. And, but I certainly have every confidence that, what she's doing is right. And, it'll work out.
Well, this is the point in the program where I normally say I'm going to open the floor to questions from our Zoom attendees, but we're already getting questions.
Oh, let me take a look.
Yeah, so you can put your questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question via audio.
So this is about volunteers, with volunteers and other businesses who want to be known as easier. This is an interesting subject. Volunteers, an interesting subject, period. Managing volunteers is difficult. Yes, they're free. Yes, you love them and you appreciate everything they do, but they require special attention. You can't fire them really if they don't work out. So it's difficult, and sometimes volunteers and paid people working side by side is complicated. Sometimes people volunteer. I've seen this in organizations. They volunteer, but they really would like to be paid. So then, they're sort of hinting around about, well, is there some way to get paid? Now this becomes complicated. So it's, volunteers are fantastic. And it's a little bit on the same side as the issue of managing boards. I can't stress enough the importance of having the right board and managing it properly. So many nonprofits have boards that are disconnected from reality, that are not paying attention, that are not supporting the organization. It's a disaster. And they don't figure it out until it's too late. And so for the CEO of the organization, there really need to be standards for board members. They need to show up at meetings, they need to participate, they need to understand what the organization's doing. Some of them put a financial requirement on board members. They need to contribute a certain amount. So I can't stress this enough. I've seen so many organizations where they ran into big problems, and everyone says, where was the board? And the answer is the board was like disconnected. They were not involved. They were not paying attention. Or they thought they were supporting their friend who's the chair of the board, or they were supporting their friend who's the CEO by just being on the board. Well, they weren't doing them any favors if the organization was suffering and they didn't identify it and be part of the solution. So anyway, volunteers, board members, very, very important issue. To title of my most recently published book. So
I just typed it into the chat here.
okay, thank you very much. That's it. It's on Amazon, Bankable Business Plans for Nonprofits.
Yeah, we've also ordered a copy for the library.
Oh my God, fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. So
and also, I wanted to ask about your website. If people wanted to go to your website, what is the URL for that?
so the URL is in the front of the book.
Okay.
So if you you know, you or I could distribute it to people you know, afterwards. I don't have it off the top of my head, but
Okay.
so the website has, and you know, continue, and it'll be a continuing work in progress. It has interviews with experts on these topics. So that accountant I mentioned,
Oh,
you know, he's in there. I have you know, some really super accomplished fundraisers who gave interviews. You know, what's their approach to raising money? What do they advise new nonprofits for raising money? I think that's, you know, very valuable to people. You know, some ideas about running promotions. It's not quite finished, but there are some templates for financial statements as well, which will help you get over that hump of doing the financial projections for your nascent nonprofit. So there's, you know, there's one question I was just thinking about earlier, Phil, with one previous question I really didn't answer is, you know, you need to say, why do I need to do a nonprofit at all? And yeah, there you go. Thank you, Sally.
thanks, Sally.
So no. So the 2007 book is Bankable Business Plans. That's for businesses. The 2021 book is Bankable Business Plans for Nonprofits. But you know, a question is like, why do a nonprofit at all? You know, you got to register with the state. You've got all these reporting requirements. You got to publicly report how much you're being paid. You know, there's a lot of complications of running a nonprofit. You know, why do it? And the reason is that people can give you money and get a tax deduction. So if you think that's the main way you're going to get revenue, is because you're going to go to philanthropies who can only give to nonprofits, or you're going to raise money from people who want the tax deduction of giving to you, well, or you want to get contracts from the government for training programs or other things, and they have a bias towards nonprofits, that makes sense. If you're basically just going to sell things or get revenue or sell tickets, you don't really need to be a nonprofit. You can accomplish the same mission without going through the agita of becoming and managing a nonprofit. And if for some reason, after you get finished, you know, so you started a dance school and, you know, you're selling lessons, and then maybe after a couple of years, you say, you know, I'd like to be a nonprofit because I'd like to start doing programs for free in communities of need. Well, then maybe you want to shift to being a nonprofit, or maybe you want to have both. You can have a nonprofit and a profit-making entity that, you know, work together. So there's a lot of wrinkles to that, but it basically turns on the issue of who you get raising money from. And anyway, you know, by the way, when a nonprofit closes, the assets of it, you can give the assets to another nonprofit, or the assets of it go to the state. And you know, some people may think, oh, I can have a nonprofit and I can make money from it. Not the best way to make money. If you want to make money from a nonprofit, it's got to be basically through salary, and that gets publicly reported annually.
And you note this in the book, but also, you know, it's very important to have a passion for what you want to start here. And I feel like sometimes people forget that, or they go into it for the wrong reasons and they don't have that. So
yeah, you really, You really got to believe it. You got to, there's a lot of, a lot of late nights, a lot of issues you're going to deal with, a lot of frustration. It's not going to go as fast and become as big as you'd like in the time that you would like, right? So if I start a nonprofit on an issue about helping kids with ADHD learn how to read, I mean, I just think this is the most important issue in the world, and everybody should want to do this. And of course, everybody's going to say to you, oh, that's great, good, continue to do that. But whether or not they're going to volunteer, they're going to give money, they're going to connect me with their schools, they're going to be publishers who are going to give me books just because I'm doing a good thing, no. And you got to be committed to fighting all those things through. In the final analysis, you will achieve what you set out to do if you do it consistently and reasonably, and you do this match of mission and money so that you're not under financial strain, which is, businesses fail when they run out of money. So, we see this now, what Amazon went through as it grew, or Uber went through as it grew. These companies raise billions and billions of dollars and they lose millions and millions of dollars, and yet they're still in business. Why? Because they have money in the bank. And that's true for every business. When you have money in the bank, you can pay your bills, you can pay your employees, and you can stay in business. The same is true for nonprofits. As long as you're bringing in enough to continue to work towards your mission, you can continue to be a nonprofit that's functional and viable and working to grow. So, you need to focus on that money side of it, unless you think you're going to just support this yourself, which a lot of people end up doing, of course.
Any other questions for Dr. Rogoff? Anyone getting started with a business plan that wants to ask some questions? I don't think we missed anything from farther back.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, you're, you're a brilliant interviewer, and it's a pleasure to engage in this conversation with you.
Oh, looks like we have another question here.
All right, let's see. What can a business do if they were through a fire? I don't know, start over. I don't know, I don't know. I need to know. I need to know the context there. You have to think about seriously to give you a more serious answer. When you think about like what's gone on with natural disasters, which we've had many more of than we, obviously than we want, but whether it's in Louisiana or in the West. And you think, look, there are thousands of nonprofits in these areas, and these businesses, they've lost their phone service, they've lost their electricity, their employees can't come to work because they're trying to rebuild their houses. Whatever service they're providing to people is probably more needed than ever before. If they run a soup kitchen, all of a sudden FEMA's there with millions of free meals for people. This situation of dealing with these disruptions can be disastrous for nonprofits. And unfortunately, in this world with, more frequent flooding and fires and, hurricanes, you need to plan that through. And of course, pandemics. So, yeah. So if you've gone through a fire, you really have, it's really going to test you.
Has the internet made the interactions worse?
Oh man, it's like, so God, we should do a whole other session on issues of nonprofits and the internet and any kind of interactions. So obviously the internet opened up the world of social media. So it allows an organization that just has lived for 30 years on serving a population in Southern Cleveland to now reach out to the world through social media and to now become a competitive force to many other organizations. So I talked earlier about you need to have a geographic niche. Well, the internet erodes those geographic niches for many organizations. And how are you going to communicate on the internet? So are you going to send people email? You know, a lot of people get too much email. A lot of people don't read their email. Young people don't use email. Are you going to use, you know, social media platforms like Facebook? You know, there are people like me, I don't use Facebook, and you know, so that you'd miss me with that. You know, are you going to start creating programs that run on TikTok and Twitter and all of this? And the answer is you probably will. And it's an expertise that you need when you build your organization. So I would say, yeah, so the internet has created great opportunities and it's created great complications.
Well, I'd like to thank the Zoom attendees for joining us and also asking some excellent questions. And Dr. Rogoff, I'd like to thank you again. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for your insight and all of the knowledge that you shared with us tonight.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Again, I'm Phil Pajali with the Yonkers Public Library, and thank you for attending. And we're going to say goodnight.
Great. Thanks again.